Well, greetings, everybody, and welcome to this week's edition of the Inworld Review. This is a show where we look at sort of arts and people and events, happenings in opensim, basically, particularly those opensim installations, grids we would call them, that are connected together on the hypergrid. Um, what else can I say, really? Sometimes we look at places, sometimes we look at art, and this week we're going to be looking at a sometimes forgotten side. Well, I suppose for some people anyway, of what we're doing. That's actually the viewers that we use to travel around and see things in Open Simulator. And in our case, it's our viewers are pretty much shared viewers with the old Second Life program, and some of the background technology to viewers and stuff like that is actually common to both the Open Simulator grids and Second Life's grid. Something we will come to as we talk. Now, my name is Mal Burns. I'm croaking a bit today, but you can probably still hear the name.
Hmm.
And I'm the host here. I'm also joined on my right hand side by James Atlloud, who's he's always sitting and he's always fiddling with his knobs, aren't you, James?
Yes, it's my superpower, Mal.
Yeah, yeah. So super knob is
Yep.
what we call him. Well, sometimes. Basically, he's twisting the fiddling with the sound and the vision mixer and everything else like that that pulls everything together for you to watch, so that you're not just stuck with talking heads or talking avatar heads for that matter. Right, on my left side, my regular co-host, Thirza Ember. Welcome, Thirza.
Hey Mal, nice to be here.
Always nice to have you too. Thirza, of course, convenes the Hypergrid Safari and so much more as well. And also books, does all the booking for guests here by and large as well.
Yeah.
Um, right. That's our team, so to speak. And our guest this week, we have AI Austin, who I'm told I will be calling I. Welcome, welcome, I.
Hi there, folks.
Hi, I. We'll have
Hello.
fun. We'll have fun with this one, won't we? Right. Okay. Well, I will explain things as we go along, and we're also joined by Humbletim Metaverse, who I'm going to be calling Tim. Welcome, Tim.
Well, thanks for having me.
Lovely. Thanks for being here, basically. Right, now we will be moving on to talking about the viewers, and there's quite a lot of exciting stuff happening with viewers one way or another, and some other related things that we're all involved in. We'll be mentioning too a little bit. So probably a wide range of topics for this show, although probably less visual than normal. Right. Now, I'm actually just going to bring up a couple of housekeeping clips before we do anything else. I've got a blog here which is from what is it? It's alternatemetaverse.blogspot.com. So ALTERNATEMETAVERSE blogspot.com. It's just a single post, very short actually. It's almost like a message, but it's sort of honouring their lost loved ones basically. It's about Doc Nolan and Zenon Darrow, and um, I guess it's just a kind of region you can kind of see there, which is that going to open properly? I don't think it is it? It just takes a long while. Yeah. So they're just a blog with various pictures of their sort of tribute region, as it were. And some nice pictures there for people who've been on that grid. And a poem to finish it off. So that was there. Um, right. We have. Oh, actually, that's the only main post that doesn't come elsewhere. We also have one post coming up, which is eyes post, which we'll be coming to later. So, in the meantime, it's about time for our sort of insert section where Thirza Ember is going to take us through the hypergrid happenings. Take it away, Thirza.
Hey guys, yes, Hypergrid Happenings, a name stolen from Stranic Zipper, of all people, over there on Facebook. Hypergrid Happenings, though, he tells me, is a name that he has not copyrighted, so we're free to use it for ourselves if we wish to. And so there's a bunch of stuff coming up this week that you might like to go to. Everybody's favorite ukulele player, Joao, is performing all over the place, of course, but particularly interesting if you'd like to go over on Thursday and hear him on Alternate Metaverse Grid, AMV. He'll be playing over there at the Art Speak Cafe, which is a really nice venue worth checking out. That's one thing. So nice Portuguese music at 11 o'clock Pacific time, grid time. Another fun thing to do is go over to Bridgemere. They have 4 different regular music events every week. This is just one of them. Rockin' Robert, he's a lot of fun, and he's playing on Fridays. You can catch him for 2 hours from 3 to 5 p.m. So another fun thing, that is on Bridgemere at outworlds.net, and the sim's name is Paradise Lagoon. Here's a fun thing to do, going back to AMV Grid. Vanny Cannoli runs a witchcraft course. Anybody interested? I can see the voodoo could be working for us over here. I could certainly do with some spells. So she does that over on Autumn Rose region, and it's a lot of fun. It's a weekly thing. It's run on a Friday, and she does that at 10:30 in the morning, grid time. So a little earlier than right now, but more or less this kind of time. Next up, we have Putri Solo. If you've never heard her, she is Indonesian, and you can tell it immediately. She starts singing. Fantastic music, very unusual, nothing that you would normally hear if you go to music events. She's out bi-weekly. You can catch her over on New Hope Grid. She plays in a lot of different places, but that's a really good place to find her because it's a lovely grid. I recommend that. That'll be tomorrow at 2 o'clock. So catch that if you can. You won't regret it. Sadly, this is not one that any of you sitting here with me on the stage can attend. This is Ladies' Night, run by Forrest Azure. She's got a couple of gentlemen who are planning to entertain the ladies on Thursday night. Yeah, no, sneaking in with strange avatars, Mal.
My pussycat goes everywhere.
Well,
An open sim, I do that.
I'm not going to answer that one.
No, of course you not.
And here's a really interesting thing for Saturday that I would recommend to anybody. Now, this is Laz over there on Third Rock Grid, Lazuli Paraka, who is the owner of Third Rock Grid. As he says himself, there's so many interesting places on that grid, and there really are. So what he does is he organizes a tour of the grid, a sort of mini safari type thing. So you get to visit with him and check out some of the different grids. It starts on different regions. It starts on his region, which is called Antiquity, as you can see here in the picture. That itself is really worth visiting. And that's from 1 to 2 o'clock on Saturday. So check that out if you can. Anybody who has parties, special events, projects happening, classes, anything like that would like to share them with us so that we can publicize them, just get in touch with me. I'll be really happy to put a poster on Hypergrid Happenings.
Well, yay! Thank you, Thirza, for that little roundup. I'm just going to quickly use the opportunity to show you a shot of a website called opensim World. Very good place to go to find the latest regions and events too. And if you're in the Hypergrid Explorers Discord server, you'll also know there's a live feed from opensim World that comes through there too. With events on it. Something I also discovered this week, I think it was Kelso or somebody we know who sent me the link. As you probably know, I got various accounts with Mastodon, um, uh, mostly where I put embedded videos and things, and they get forwarded to Twitter. But I did discover that if you actually go to, I forget how you get to it, but basically, you can go, well, actually, the best way to do it is you can go to at symbol Mal Burns, followed by an at symbol opensim world. And they actually have a Mastodon client all of their own, which I think might become very useful because it means there'll be like it'd be like a Twitter just for OpenSim World users, as opposed to all the other clutter we get. Will it be any use? I don't know, but I've got an account there, so you can find me there, and you can obviously get your own account too. But as far as I know, there's no direct way of getting an account on the OpenSim World.com webpage. You actually have to go to somebody's account there and then join up. Okay, so just thought I'd get that in because it's kind of important. And moving back up now to Austin's blog. Eyes blog. I'm not gonna I'm not gonna do too well with this, I don't think. Right, time to introduce you. I think now you are essentially in charge with the virtual university. Virtual university at Edinburgh.
Yes, I act as the coordinator of that group. Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe just tell us a little about the university's work in virtual worlds and your history.
So yeah, my own background is in artificial intelligence and robotics. So I'm really a researcher, a scientist in that area, and a software engineer. But I got involved in a lot of work to do with collaboration and teamwork, especially for distributed groups. And it's that interested me in virtual worlds. So going right back to the early MUDs and MOOs, you know, the things that folks were working on as ways of communicating across distributed teams, and then using 3D metaphors for that. So that's why over the years, going back more than 3-4 decades, we've been interested in what were really the pre-runners of today's virtual worlds. So of course, when Second Life came along, we got involved in that. Several people in the university, it turned out, were working on this, in the education department, the vet school, my own group, which is informatics. We were all doing our own separate things, looking at Second Life and other platforms, going right back to there and ones of that kind. So we found each other actually through press releases that the different groups were making. So we were, you know, it was at the time when a lot of people were talking in the press about virtual worlds and what people were doing, and people in educational circles were using campfires in virtual worlds. So basically we realized that there's several of us working on the same thing, and because of that we formed a group, which is a university level group. It's a virtual institute really, which is VUE, the Virtual University of Edinburgh. So that's how we got started.
Right. Did Edinburgh's involvement really came like their .com Second Lifetime? It didn't.
Correct. Well, it was earlier than that. I was using professional simulation tools such as Forterra. These were £250,000 license systems. We were using those professionally. People were using their and other early virtual worlds. When Second Life came along, I think it was around 2006 that the Virtual University of Edinburgh really was already doing work in Second Life. I was looking at Second Life of around 2004, which was probably a year after it had started.
Right. We go back to about the same time, I think, when it comes to Second Life.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of folks who are interested in these things tend to have looked at a range of platforms. So some of them weren't very good at first, of course, but around that time, around 2006, 2007, the graphics really became usable enough that we could use them for tutorial spaces and meeting spaces and teleconferences and things like that.
All right. So I'm just scrolling down.
Yeah, the map you've got up now, if our audience can see it, that's the different regions we had in Second Life at its biggest extent, and you can imagine that was costing us a lot of money.
How many regions is that?
What is
It
it?
looks like about 12 or something.
About
Or
12,
maybe
yeah,
more.
that'd be right. That'd be around 12.
Yep.
Blimey,
the
that
pit-
must have cost a
That
fortune.
must have
well,
been really
exactly.
expensive.
And in fact, the View organization was set up to help have continuity of funding. So the idea was, as different departments came and went with their interests, we would try to preserve a core set of regions. So it got to around that. All of that, by the way, is also preserved in opensim. So we were able to take the content across at that time because of the way we were doing our asset management. So the regions you see there were funded by about 5 different departments, including the central university authorities.
And what
with
kind of things were they doing in World?
a wide range of things. Almost everything you can imagine, actually. But it was used for research. It was used for scientific experiments, eye tracking experiments. It was used for outreach, tutorials. We did mixed reality teleconferences in there, all sorts of things. There is a blog post that actually explains. We also had expositions and photo museums, and all sorts of different things were going on. I would say almost anything you could imagine you could be doing as an educational group for research, teaching, tutorial spaces and outreach were being done at the time.
And you were
Around
nimble
20
enough to be able to change the sim according to the needs of the
Well, not so
person.
much.
How
There
did that work?
there was one like that because it was used for eye tracking experiments. So it was very dynamic. But most of the regions were kind of relatively, once they were designed, they became relatively static, and it was designed with some features. I'm just going to bring up one of the pictures if I can. I'm just going to go along, bringing up a photo that I'm just scrolling along a little thumbnails thing. I'll get you there in a second. I'm looking for that one, Mal. So that one there. Can you guys?
Oh, yeah, James will probably put a camera on it. Oh, that's the map, or no, that's the.
Well, it just went off actually. So let's go back.
Oh, that went off too. Dear.
I don't know why I can't see what I want to now. The one of is taken across Edinburgh. Well,
Let me
I had
just,
it anyway. Has James got it?
let me see if I can pan to it one way or another.
Yeah, I can
think-
see
I
it.
think-
It's no problem when it's there.
Yeah. I'm going back. I'm using a little thumbnails
Oh,
thing.
okay. Yeah, sorry. I think we're
I'm
both-
looking for that one of that's looking across the view regions.
Right, I think we're doing it at the same time. So
Well, stop clicking.
Somebody stop clicking.
Yeah. Well, I won't do it anymore.
No, I
So-
thought
so-
you. I thought you
No,
were.
no. So
find it, yeah.
if you do it for me, Mal, bring up the one that's taken across with the dome and the balloon on it that you had. These are pictures taken inside the virtual. No, go back. You're now into other things. Just
Oh,
3D
it's so
models.
back, is it? Okay, let's
Yeah.
go.
So
Let's start at the beginning and go forward.
obviously we should agree who clicks the thumbnails, eh?
Yeah. Oh, that one.
So some of these are other assets that we have. This is the Open Virtual Collaboration Environment, which is a project we've done to provide a collaboration area. This is available in open source as well. We've tried to make all these things available, and with instrument and meeting spaces in there. So if you keep going, this is the Open VC area and the I rooms, as we call them, which are instrument and meeting spaces for
That's nice.
a range of things. So, no, I was looking for that one. That's the balloon, the one with the. These are meetings inside the space. You're almost there. You're two away from it. That's it. Stop there.
Right.
The balloon.
Okay.
The balloon. So that's taken looking across about 6 regions. And what it is it kind of suggests Edinburgh. So the Edinburgh University buildings are iconically created here. The balloon represents something that was actually done for real in the late 1800s.
Wow.
But you can take a balloon tour of the area, and our university informatics building is in the middle, the castle is in the end, and some of the Calton Hill monuments that are in Edinburgh. So some of this was deliberate. The university wanted us to have a true Edinburgh theming to the core areas that we had, and then you went off to the different departments. So the vet school, the business school, the school of informatics, they had their own regions with their own buildings, and some are built to look like they're real buildings, and others were built purposeful. And if you went off into certain areas, there was disability support groups and all sorts of things going on here.
Right. So the whole works there. Right, I remember. Well, now I'll come to the OMI thing in a while. But yeah, you actually did do bills, didn't you, for other people like you? The OMI people wanted somewhere to meet. I don't think they've ever used it, but you put up regions for.
Oh, now that yeah. When some of the images you were scrolling through are the open VCE area.
I
If
thought
you've
they
still
looked
got the
great.
map
Yeah,
up, if you've still got the map up, the bottom
yeah,
right-hand corner, that is a replicable opensim archive file. We also
right,
had that area inside Second Life for work we were doing on our research projects with America. So in
right.
particular, it was used for a range of actual experiments for human factors experimentation to look at the ways you could respond in emergency response conditions. But basically, that segment, that 256 by 256 meter area, we can replicate that where we need to, and then adapt it with the logos and the content and the actual buildings that are on it for
Yeah.
the collaboration that people want. And as you were saying, Mal, we did a copy of that for the Open Metaverse Initiative for people, OMI people,
Well, I use
because it's
that.
relatively easy to adapt.
Yeah, I use that as my build in Kitely. So when I purchased a region in Kitely, that was one of the
Yeah,
options, and there it was,
correct.
all
Correct.
there.
At one time, I'm not sure if it still is, but that was the idea. We made it. The licensing of it is completely, very intended to be very open. It can be used for commercial purposes as well as other open
Yeah.
source and free purposes. And the whole idea was to get people started. So it provides an amphitheater, exposition pavilions. It's got these intelligent meeting spaces, a range of project suites, and then all sorts of fun areas like a campfire, a cavern. There's a diving area that you can go pick up some scuba gear. So it's meant to be a bit of fun, but actually very practical. And it has been used for a wide range of projects. There are hundreds of copies of that around.
Yeah,
on
there
the
must be.
grids.
We have a backup studio in the volcano. So
Exactly. Good. Good.
So, did you say you still have these regions in Second Life?
No. So Second Life really we can't use because of the cost. So we can run up one of these areas. We can run up an iRoom, for instance, in any space that we're able to use. But the costs of the annual fees was really too much for what we were doing and the amount. So we switched a lot of that over to opensim. So opensim, all of that what you just saw there is running in OS Grid now.
So, how soon did you
Running on our
discover?
own servers connected to OS Grid. I've got
Right.
to explain that there actually are reasons we can't run our own grid anymore. We used to have our own grid, which was a copy of what was in Second Life called OpenView, and because of firewall reasons, we aren't allowed to open that up. It runs within the university, but only behind the firewall. So the
So,
OS Grid
how?
version, which I run on a server outside the university, is the only copy that we can run at the moment.
So, did you discover OS Grid, OpenSim immediately? Were you aware of its existence immediately
Yeah,
when OS Grid opened and so forth? So, but you
we were in
stayed in
Second
Second Life for
Life.
quite a long time.
We were in Second Life just before we discovered OpenSim.
Okay.
So we were looking exactly for that. We were actually at one point licensing Second Life Enterprise, which is
Oh gosh, yes.
so. The whole idea, you see, was that we really thought that these things would have to be hosted ourselves for privacy reasons and for control. So we were looking at the IBM package with Linden Labs to host servers that were what they called at the time Second Life Enterprise, which they didn't continue with. And it was around that time we found OpenSim. So we were in OpenSim late 2007, I believe. Certainly the commits were about number 900 or something like that when I ran up the first server that we used for OpenSim. So we were very early on in OpenSim, and that's why we got involved with the development team for OpenSim and acting as testers very early on for it.
I've quickly brought up your marketplace screen in Second Life, and the stuff is still there.
And you'll see it's Linden zeros, correct?
yes, exactly. It's still got OpenVC there. It's a close up. It basically shows you.
That means people can get it in Second Life as well as
Yeah,
an open sim as an or. Yeah, correct.
but it's giving us.
We had professional help to create the 3D models. Clever
Yeah.
Zebra produced some of the 3D modeling
Yes,
for us.
I remember. I remember Nick and yeah. Right. No, I just thought these pictures actually gave a slightly different view because it's the
Yep.
same build basically in both, isn't it? So let's get back to your real blog, as it were. Right now, actually, we'll come back to you. I think I'll just move to Humbletim. There's a bit left out of it here. One of the things we're going to be talking about is viewers and stuff. So. Tim, maybe you'd like to give a little background on yourself and your particular involvement with the viewer. I mean, because it's a control alt something viewer, isn't it? Oops, I have a lot of this. Okay. Okay, I'm getting a lot of hiss there. I'm not actually hearing you properly.
Yeah,
So
nor I also am having a problem, right?
yes, it's very uncomfortable actually. Maybe just check your microphone, Tim. I'll carry on. I'll carry on chatting with I think, until we can get that sorted. I couldn't hear anything. Um, okay. Coming back to you, I now.
So,
We
so, so, so remember, Tim has been involved with a range of platforms for virtual worlds
yeah.
and viewers. But I think you mixing up Control Alt Studio was actually done by David Rowe.
Oh,
So he was the one who did the Control Alt Studio viewer.
right. Okay. Yeah, I get a bit confused. I don't do the headsets bit
There's been a
myself.
range. I mean, just an introduction. There has been a range of VR viewers going right back. The first ones were actually done by the University of Michigan back in 2007. So around the time we were entering Second Life, there was already 3D stereoscopic viewers prior to today's VR headsets.
Yeah.
And Kirsten's viewer, for instance, I've got a notice that was 3D anaglyph with red cyan glasses in 2011. And then
Yeah.
David Rao did Control Alt Studio, the range of different 3D models and mechanisms in it in 2014. That was at the same time Linden Labs were producing their Oculus Rift viewer.
Ah, that's no 14. Yeah, that would be. Yeah, because a lot of those early things are really kind of using offset principles, aren't they? Where you're getting two slightly offset images and
Well,
then
in a
separate.
way, that's all that VR needs. The thing is, you've got to be careful you don't half the frame rate. So the way we're doing now with Firestorm and the VR mod that gets inserted into Firestorm, you
Yeah.
really do lose half the frame rate. It's a relatively simple method that a guy called Peter Kapler did, but it's kind of easy to do, relatively easy to do, which means it's easy to adapt the viewer code without making a lot of changes, and that's kept it adaptable. It's meant we've been able to continue to do new versions, and that's what Tim has been helping with as well, and making sure that build can continue to be done.
Sorry, I'm busy switching screens here to try and find Discord. Have we got you back yet, Tim?
He just logged back in.
Right, I keep hearing this bing bong in the background, like somebody coming in and out. So
Right.
guess we'll wait.
Testing 1, 2.
Oh,
Yep.
you're with us.
Oh,
Yeah.
I had to switch devices right when it was my turn to talk.
Of course.
Desktop.
That's,
All right.
that's the way it happens. Okay, so I was going to ask you, like, like I did with just the basic background to how you got started, and particularly leading into your interest in the viewer.
Yeah. Well, I actually came at it from a direction that is reverse of somewhere. I discovered high fidelity first, and getting involved with that, started to hear about Second Life, and so then discovered Second Life second, and
Interesting. Wow.
over the years, comparing the code bases from a very low level technical standpoint, the viewer code is very similar, and a couple engineers apparently worked on both, but I think it's more a side effect of just the the coordinating virtual worlds, there's only so many ways to do certain things. And so you'll find like user accounts and like, world rosters and stuff kind of everywhere. And that similarity is actually what drew me into the Firestorm code base originally, because, these are really complex code bases, but to find kind of two examples that felt kind of similar was unusual. And with
That's
Firestorm, it was always, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that that's something people like me on the surface miss, is the fact that I remember you in Hyperdosis, and that was very much a new thing, and people were asking, is it cross-compatible with Second Life and all that stuff? And of course it wasn't, so that was the story. But it's interesting hearing it from you because obviously Philip pulled together people working on different kinds of code and things, and some of them would have been working on Second Life and Hyperdosis, and there's bound to be similarities in the underlayers, as it were, that were, even though they're vastly different formats on the surface. So that's quite interesting.
Yeah, and with Firestorm, the also being open source was also really compelling. Coming significantly from a Linux background, there's been cases where, it's not always true, but sometimes it's true when the source is available, you can fix problems yourself. And experimenting with Firestorm, that started to be true more and more. I would get an idea of something I would like to experiment with, and I could find a way to make a custom build locally. When I first got my DK1, it was kind of hard to find adaptable experiences that were 2D, were based kind of in desktop historical 2D, but that could lend themselves for kind of imagining out, like how could these be then stretched into virtual reality? And the Second Life and opensim, universes have always been really attractive from that standpoint, because there's just so much content that can be explored that's been created organically rather than in a lab. Because you can only test so many things in a sandbox lab setting until you start missing things. And that kind of endless supply of like test cases
Yes.
is what kind of has kept me interested all this time. One of my favorite things to do in the modded Firestorm viewer is literally just float around as the consciousness. It's kind of like a VR camming of sorts, because there's no like avatar body yet. But the detail level, especially in older content, it's so marvelous in my mind. And I get in trouble for this because it's kind of the opposite of optimization. But if I come across a wicker chair that has like 2K textures that I can just get right up to in VR, it changes the way you think of that chair. Suddenly that chair is one of the most real chairs I've ever experienced in virtual reality. And so far, I've only been able to find that in the opensim and Second Life universes. That kind of organic, accidental, incredible continuum of detail.
Yeah.
Because we've got the prims to spare. That's why. In Second Life, everybody's freaking out about content loads and stuff like that.
There's no comparison between the two when it comes to being able to test things, experiment. I mean, the opensim, it's all wide open. Second Life, it costs money basically, but also it's too crowded. It's too crowded. It's not the frontier anymore. So,
here's a fun aside too. The Open VCE campus, I had no idea what I was using at the time, but I was looking to run a local instance because I kept crashing, fixing, compiling, and reconnecting. And an administrator of one of the sims said, "Hey, like, what are you doing?" Because they kept seeing it in their logs. And I realized I really should be doing that on my own server. And I happened to find the OR file for the Open VCE campus. I had no idea of its history though. So I spent so much time there testing locally.
right. Yeah, it's something it seems like almost my whole life in virtual worlds that OpenVCE has been around. As I said, I've forgotten their name again now. Nick Wilson's outfit, Tiger.
It was Clever Zebra.
Zebra. Okay.
Yeah. So we hired them to do the 3D modeling of this version for us.
Right. Okay. Yeah, because there's a sort of style to it, and once you've seen it and see it again, you think, "Oh, that's that," Right.
They,
Let's.
they had their own campus and buildings and things that were already free,
Yeah.
but we wanted to do something that had specific content in it, and so that's why we spoke to Nick at Clever Zebra, and it was very helpful in doing that for us. And
Yeah.
luckily, we did have some of the funds on our project to be able to do the 3D modeling rather than just doing it ourselves.
Yeah, that was a very exciting era. Where we hit the beginning of Metanomics, or it was Metaverse at the time with Nick and whatever. That was quite a very productive time. I mean, sadly, Nick
Yeah.
Nick Wilson lost his eyesight, which didn't help.
Oh
In
boy, poor guy.
somebody who's so involved with a virtual environment, but
So I'm just curious about the university. Do they still run projects in opensim, perhaps behind a firewall? What happens there? Do you still have experiments going on?
No, the regions are there. So these days it's. Let me see if on those images I was just showing you. If we, for instance, when we did a MOOC, the massive open online spaces. I'm just bringing up an image now, for instance. That's a real seminar with people right across the world from a whole load of businesses and government agencies where we're talking about a particular project. But if I go to this one, that's a tutorial that was done on a Coursera MOOC. About 50 people, 60 people coming in together there to talk about. To ask questions of the tutors and the people on stage in the green. That's me in my flight suit on the stage.
Just tell our viewers while we're at it.
And that's my colleague Gerhard Wickler.
Yeah, no, the MOOC. I don't remember what it is. Multi-user.
It's massive open online courses.
Yep.
So
Online courses.
Yeah, we did one on AI. Remember, my professional work is in AI and AI planning, task support. So we did a MOOC, which was MSc level in AI planning. We ran it for 3 years on Coursera, and it's now all available open source through Open Educational Resources at the University of Edinburgh. It's used on a number of PhD courses across the world, the material. So we produced that. We had 113,000 students eventually on that. So the university got into MOOCs quite early on, and the AI planning MOOC was one of the first 6 that the University of Edinburgh did.
I find that pretty interesting because so many people say, well, it's very hard to get students to get an avatar, and then they waste a lot of time with their appearance, or there are problems that they just don't engage correctly. But it seems like you've overcome that, or perhaps that's not true, that students have all these
some people do.
problems.
Remember that in this picture you're seeing about maybe 50 or 60 people.
Yes.
And there were probably 12 to 15,000 people on that course. So we were fortunate that we actually had some people. We had about 30 tutors on that course each time, and some of them were keen on Second Life and virtual worlds. So we were very fortunate that we had a lady in Germany who ran that group, and we had another group who were Portuguese speakers who used to have their own meetings. So we had basically a community tutor who ran the meeting on our behalf and acted as a chairwoman or chairman to run it. So we could literally just turn up and answer the questions and concentrate on giving genuine tutorial help to the students who were there.
Did you have any? I mean, given that number of students, did you have any very big Inworld events where you had to use shards?
So we designed it to scale, Mal. We intended it so it could go up to a few thousand people, not all in one area. We had all the overflows, and we had a streaming version of it. We were sending it out on a live stream at the same time, because we used to running mixed reality events in the university. We have virtual graduations that link the real graduation hall with Second Life on opensim, so that we can stream both ways. So people who are distant but want to be involved can join in, and the join in real time both ways. So you know, on the screen in our graduation hall in Edinburgh, they see the Second Life screen, and when the people receive their degree, we show the Second Life screen, then we show the real people each way.
And
And so we were used to this kind of mixed reality stuff for a range of events we'd run.
touching on
So,
what
so,
Thirza
so
hinted
it
at,
was designed to scale, but in fact, I think at any one time we never had more than 60 people inside.
all
We
right.
didn't even have to use our corner systems, which could run maybe 400 people.
Yeah, exactly. For Metaverse. So are these? The other thing, I guess Thursday hinted at this a bit. What I mean, for example, the ceremony or something for whatever. Would these actually run behind a firewall? In other words, if you have
No,
a,
no, those were before we needed to go. No, those were before we needed to close the firewall holes. It was
right,
only last year that we really had to do that for security reasons. The number of attacks on universities, it's unbelievable.
yeah,
There's millions of attacks daily. So,
everywhere now. Yeah.
so in particular, these services which are not run by the traditional group in the central university, but are typically run by people like myself and others who are
Yeah.
in departments, even if we're in informatics and computer science departments. Eventually, it just got to be too much of a risk, and they asked us to close the firewall holes. So that's why things had to go behind the firewall.
I was just thinking, well, if you stream things like this into Second Life, and it gets viral, it sort of would be almost, the public come in, and
No, but remember, we could all, because these were our own regions, we can control access. We can make
yeah, Inworld, yeah,
virtual graduations, for instance. You can make a group that means only the people in the group can get onto the region.
yeah,
We
sure,
could do
sure.
that in Second Life as well.
Yeah.
Very nice.
That's another thing. I mean, we're often aware, but never really sure the extent to which, opensim is the hypergrid connecting everything is absolutely wonderful. But there are so many regions that use opensim software that on the hypergrid for various reasons. The academic institutions, schools, R&D departments, places that don't want you jumping across to them, and indeed others that are just builders want to get on with their work, and they like to have an open day
Correct,
now.
correct.
Again.
On the Second Life regions, for instance, we had some regions that just were not open to anyone. They were intended for experimentation. Yeah, I remember we did some work on eye tracking prior to real VR headsets, and we used Second Life so that we could track where people were directing their attention on what was really a modified version of a viewer, and that work was again not intended to be open. The build was almost like a cube from the outside. It was only inside that eye tracking work was going on.
Well, it's
That's
like, yeah.
not the sort of thing you would have made accessible to anyone else.
Yeah, actually, Second Life did do an I don't know. It must have been viewer side at some point. I remember trying it out. I had to use a webcam to animate my face in Second Life. It was very crude. You weren't involved in that. I mean, given that it's about 10.
These viewers are really big, and again, as Tim was saying, the fact that they were made open source with a very flexible license, the LGPL license, does mean that you were able to go in and make changes to the code if you had the knowledge. We had a particularly good engineer at the time who really understood how to make changes so that the eye tracking people could do what they wanted with a relatively standard viewer. And this is not using webcam technology; it's just looking at where people's attention is with the mouse and things like that. Yep.
Yeah. Now I know there was a webcam one, and Lyndon's were behind it. I forget who it wasn't Philip. It was one of the other founders. I never remember their names, but it worked as well. But it caused extra lag because back in those days, 12 years ago or something, the upload from a webcam was not inconsequential, to and processing it. So. Right, let's look at new developers in the viewer. Have I got you back, Tim? Right, not sure. Not sure about that. I wanted to... Oh, are you there, Tim?
I'm here.
Right, I'm just on our screen at the back here. I'm just putting up I've gone to the YouTube page for Crystal Frost, or rather Berry Bunny. I know you both know a bit about this, don't you?
I
And
want to know, first of all, why is it called Crystal Frost? Who came up with this name? That's a great name.
well, crystal's the opposite of fire, and frost is I don't know. Or they could have
Ah,
frozen
is
storm,
that
or
it?
they could have got
Is
it
that
frozen
it?
storm. I don't know.
Oh,
I
gotcha.
don't
I
know to be
think you'll have to ask Berry Bunny about that.
yeah.
Yeah.
But she's an open sim here. She's known as Kalishi. I was trying to get her on the OSCC panel way back when, and she was just sort of chicken out. This one, I'm going to go. I think this is the one I want. Yeah, look at this water. Now this is in. You don't see that water in Firestorm, but the water is actually in Second Life, I believe, in this case. So it's the viewer is able to do things like this to the water.
Is that the Unity viewer?
Yeah, the viewer is authored in Unity.
Oh, it says
but
Unity right there on the screen.
Yeah, but the actual viewer is intended to be an alternative to Firestorm, so it's for use in Second Life and opensim. Basically, it's the content you see in the viewer is the same as it is in Firestorm, but the method of rendering it and the detail is different because the tools in Unity can actually enhance what
You
is
should
there.
probably explain, Mal, that what
It's
Berry
output.
Bunny is doing is using a library that underlies opensim as well, or a version of it does, called Libre Metaverse. So this library is the thing that's enabled open source viewers to use opensim as well as Second Life. It's kind of a Second Life compatible API layer, and that's what Berry Bunny is doing. She's using that library to take the content across into what is really a dynamic Unity-based view of the Unity platform. So
Yeah.
she can then use a range of enhancements inside that to things like water and other rendering to use what the Unity engine can do.
Right. And then the whole thing, I mean, this is very early days, of course, but the whole project, when complete, would then be output from Unity, as it were, with all the with a pipe to all the SL or OpenSim assets, but as a separate viewer. So the viewer would be a kind of Unity, um, a dedicated Unity viewer that accesses the print-based worlds, basically, of OpenSim and
So the important thing is that it's real time. It's doing that synchronously with the content, whereas some other people have done exports from OpenSim through various export methods, Collada or FBX or GLTF, and then they've brought those into Unity-based platforms. But there, it's not live. You're going through that intermediate step of taking the content out. We've been using an OR converter, for instance, to bring across that content and make it available in Unity-based viewer systems and platforms like SignSpace and others. But that isn't live with the actual server, whereas Berry Bunny's approach is live because it's using the libraries and API onto the actual content in Second Life, and eventually OpenSim is their intention.
Well, does that have
Yeah.
implications for VR? I mean, would the frame rate improve with some Unity engines in there?
I think there's no reason to believe the frame rate will improve just because of that.
It's still server frame rate. Okay.
Yeah, you've still got all the same issues. VR is just another layer, another orthogonal issue to deal with. When you've got to render the world, then you've got to think how you put it over into VR, haven't you?
yeah.
Yep.
It's totally fascinating. I saw some still shots we had up a couple of weeks ago where she posted a still shot of a scene. One was seen in the Firestorm viewer, one was seen in the Crystal Frost viewer, and the clarity of the Crystal Frost rendering was just way in advance of what Firestorm was capable of. But this was still shots, of course, where you were able to sort of compare to the exact scene and the exact detail. Tim, are you still with us? I keep forgetting to check because we were having.
I was trying to chime in. I think my mic was cutting me off.
Oh, yeah, I
Yeah,
got you.
yeah, this is really exciting. There's been there was another Unity. It was called Unity SL. and it seemed to hit a point where it went on hold indefinitely. But it was another attempt to use Open Metaverse to bring it into the Unity world, and it's certainly not necessarily any easier to be in a Unity space. You have to arrange for all the different mechanics and everything. But once you can get in that space, it does potentially you might be able to leverage some of the overall Unity VR ecosystem and optimizations. And there's a lot of engineers constantly trying to make Unity VR more performant. So if you could get it into a Unity compatible, internal structure, that it might suggest we might be able to see some higher VR frame rates against similar content. At the same time, one of the most there's another viewer called I'm actually not entirely sure how to pronounce it because I've only seen it in print, but Radagast or Radagast.
Oh, Radagast, yeah, I use that quite a lot actually.
Yeah.
Great,
What a
great for organizing your inventory when you don't go
really
well. Yeah, yeah.
well
It's
it was a wonderful video to experiment with. It was written in C#. It compiled in like 60 seconds. This is just unheard of. And but I reached the experimental limit because I actually was doing something similar, trying to get a browser-based experiment going that could view opensim content.
right.
And getting the static elements is kind of like level one. And oh wait, things are set to rotate automatically, for example. And so you kind of have to, wire up that. And then, oh wait, things can be parented to each other. And I hit the point where when I was ready to start looking at avatars, the bento limitation, like I don't know if Radagast supports mesh avatars yet, but it didn't at the time. And so basically I could get the whole world, but I couldn't get any of the people in it. And that's when
Yeah,
I started to
I think
go
that's
down.
I think that's still the same. I mean, the reason I use it is quite, I very rarely go into Second Life, but I can always run Madagascar and log in and get messages and stuff. But
You
the,
see, I take a slightly different approach on this one because I've been playing with Ready Player Me avatars,
oh yeah,
and although we have a way of getting them across into OpenSim and Second Life now, it isn't a dynamic process. You can't do it live as a way. But
yeah,
just think of it. There's no reason why you couldn't, for instance, have everything shown except avatars,
yeah.
and then allow people to have a Ready Player Me avatar linked to their OpenSim and Second Life avatar. So they had like a traveling avatar that could go into the Unity world. Then you could use the Ready Player Me complete infrastructure to just easily add avatars if you can do everything else.
This
So
would
there's lots of possibilities coming up.
this would align with like OMI's thing a bit, wouldn't it? The open avatar, um, well, a bit maybe because so much makes use of Unity. If it could
Well, as you probably
somehow,
know, Linden Labs are bring physics-based rendering materials into one of their project viewers, so they
yeah,
can do GLTF materials. They haven't yet done mesh, and they haven't. They've said that's their eventual aim, but it's not yet done. But once mesh content like GLTF can be brought across, then the avatars are GLTF, Ready Player Me avatars, for instance, the
yeah.
GLB or GLTF. But of course, the armature is slightly different. It's a Mixamo compatible skeleton there. So you do have to do a little translation. But to be honest, that translation is almost one-to-one. So these things all become possible if you start to really think of a more open world. But you've got to go back some time to remember that at one time there was an experiment with IBM and Linden Labs to
Oh yeah.
connect OpenSim and Second Life. And that didn't carry on, for a
I
range
was
of reasons, but
I
got to assume a
remember
lot of it will be commercial.
I was a grid nose.
Yeah, I tried it as well. So
Yeah,
so
it's nice going back.
that would have been great. You see, that would have been like the hypergrid equivalent of being able to move between OpenSim and Second Life. But to me, a lot of it is about asset IPR and asset control, and
Yeah,
that's why the suitcase idea that Diva Canto, Crystal Lopez came
got
up
him.
with is a
Yeah,
really good idea. So the idea that you have a suitcase or a traveling outfit, Thirza knows that we had a Hypergrid Safari meeting once where I was expounding the ideas of a traveling outfit and
yeah,
a
That's
backpack,
right. Yeah.
because I really believe that's the way to go, and I believe that needs to be intelligently filtered. So by the rights that you've got and by the translations that may be needed. And some of those translations are relatively simple. So conversion on the fly, getting things prepared, just like you would if you're traveling in the real world. You know,
Yeah,
you don't. I don't fly from Edinburgh to Los Angeles without doing a little bit of preparation and thinking what I'm going to take.
exactly.
I look at my outfit. I look at my travel pack. I think light.
I
You know, we need to have that idea. So before you go, you'll prepare stuff.
Yeah, on our grid here, as the last couple of weeks trying to sort things out, there is no suitcase, and everywhere else has got a suitcase, and I miss it. I mean, I was importing stuff into this avatar just to use with this show, and there's no suitcase, so it's all lost in a mass of stuff that this avatar's accumulated.
You can make your own suitcase, even on OS Grid. Just make your own suitcase.
Oh yeah, sure.
You can make a suitcase. You're still going to carry all your stuff though to the other grids. That's
no, well, you do. But that's doing right. So if you can take it all, why don't if you can take the kitchen sink, why not take it?
Well,
But,
it's like you get a ferry from London to Paris, and you in opensim you've got about 25 containers attached.
but you have to bear in mind there are times when you get somewhere with your my suitcase, and then you realise you wanted an image or something to pass to someone or a slide, and then you have to go back home, get it put in your suitcase, and then go back again. So there's pros and cons. Yeah.
Yeah, it's discipline really. I always make sure when I'm going somewhere, the hypergrid wise, that I've got anything I need in my suitcase.
But to be quite serious about that, the idea that you might prepare different packs. If you're going to a desert, you're going to prepare something different if you're going on your Caribbean beach holiday. So the idea that you can prepare the content you wish to take to the appropriate experience you're about to go. So if I'm going to a space sim, I'd like my spacesuit with me, and I'd like to look like I've got a spacesuit. I don't want to look like I'm going to expire when I arrive, and there's other people around who are all got nice spacesuits on, and I'm going around as if I've just come from the local beach.
Yeah. No, it's true. I mean, I hopefully all these things will get better. I mean, I keep, I remember asking Philip years and years ago about early days of OpenSim. And at the time, he just rejected it. This is before high fidelity and the idea of self-hosted, home regions. He just rejected it as the users weren't there. But over time, it's changed. And I keep thinking you've got Second Life and now got Tilia, which is the whole payment system. Why can't Tilia, for example, arrange export permissions with certain creators so that creators can put stuff on the market, and like Kitely, it can be imported into OpenSim? I mean, obviously, security's got to be tight, when you crossing the platforms. And, why couldn't we have, for example, instant messaging from Second Life to OpenSim? We did have a gadget once that did just that.
Yeah, there used to be a Jabber XMPP messaging link between these worlds, and in software you can do all of that. So, ScienceSpace, for instance, does have XMPP compatible IM, so you can put any XMPP compliant, that's Jabber, compliant IM system on it, and have a connection all the time.
Yeah,
I think some of that argues for open standards. So a lot of these things, if they were done with some open standards, but then you do have to have what you were just saying there about permissions and access. If you haven't got a license to take something across these worlds, you really shouldn't be taking it. And that's why some of the intelligent filtering that I think is needed on a backpack and your travel outfit is needed, as well as automatic conversions.
Yeah, that's it really. I mean, the filtering and the control can be done. It's just it hasn't that much at the moment. It's Linda now,
I think
Second Life a different vested interests, really. So but
I think the problem is for a lot of these things that people feel like that. Well, they don't need to if they need to communicate with someone who's not on that grid. They can just use some kind of social media. And so it becomes a third-party way of communicating. You just find them on Twitter or Facebook or something. Yeah, on Discord. Which they feel like that at least that is reliable. Whereas so many of the
Yeah, the
the
plugin.
forms of communication in world often don't work. Here in OS Grid, we've had a horrendous problem the last, I should think, 4 or 5 months, where offline messages often do not arrive from other grids, but also between people on the same grid. Those messages just were never received. So, because it's so unreliable, so often people just tend to go with what
You
they
never,
can count on,
and you never
and that's a
quite
third
know.
party service.
Yeah, you never quite know whether the problem's with the grid or with the opensim software, or a
Oh,
combination of both.
I was trying to bring up a screen there, but I have a slide that basically said I think there's the social web linked to virtual worlds, and then people's content and content management and the people themselves are really the basis of what I'd like to see all these systems supporting in due course.
Well, I often say, I mean, we're going off topic a bit, but I often say, actually, to me, Discord has become like the interoperable world because I can screen share my presence from one world on a group chat where somebody's screencasting their presence in another world, and we're on mutual voice on the same channel. It's like, you look at a grid of 9, cams in Discord, and one's in Second Life, one's in OpenSim somewhere, one's in Science Space, one's in High Fidelity. Sansar. You can mix all that together, just as you can have a video conference of people in different places in the real world. You can do the same screencasting from different virtual environments, and it really seems to be, you think, well, why bother with, trying to get viewer in one place to be compatible with a viewer in another place, etc. But let's get on. Tim. I'm not hearing enough of you, really. Anything particular you want to get in? Actually, that's probably the best way of doing it, to try and
Yeah,
capture.
just to touch on an interesting curveball that's emerged with VRM as a spec. It
Yeah.
does. There's everyone's kind of familiar with the idea of like a commercial license or not, an open source kind of license, but it also has usage restrictions. Like you can mark a VRM as not you're not allowed to use this for adult situations, and conceivably you could invent a permission that says you can't use this spacesuit on particular grids, and so there's a whole nother granularity of
Hmm.
um, of negotiation that's going to have to somehow play out through these layers.
Oh, that's
It's not
right.
just a simple bit anymore.
And
It's
plus,
something to
as
keep
soon
in
as
mind.
people have got a god power, you tell them that, even if they bought something, they may decide, well, I did buy it and I did agree that I wasn't going to share it. But then they just got it, and then they just can,
Oh,
as this many times happens, they've bought it perfectly legally, but then decide they just want to give it to sometimes just their other avatars and sometimes their friends. So, how are you going to control that once somebody's bought
How does
something?
both of you may know this much more than me because um, I've never been very up to date or interested in the blockchain thing, and certainly not cryptocurrencies. But is the blockchain something that could actually sort this out in our world, so to speak, ultimately? Because um, you can also do a lot of authentication of things, can't you, using the blockchain? I think that was originally in High Fidelity. That was one of Philip's ideas, although I think he abandoned that now. Could that work with things like permissions for virtual objects?
Oh, did I just? They had proof of provenance, which would kind of be. It was kind of like their blockchain certification process, where
Yeah,
given any asset, you could right click on it and see its origin story and ownership transfers.
yeah.
And one of the original ideas was that there would be no enforcement. It would just kind of be the shame of carrying around a stolen asset that would be used to
Yeah,
dissuade. And
that's not going to work, is it?
no, it didn't. It didn't work at all. And then, my lens into the hi-fi code base was often like the changes between the versions as actual code. And one day there was no discussion or anything, but this line of code, these couple lines of code appeared on the server that would enforce the license. And if you host your own server, but if your hosted server didn't disable this feature, it would look for things that couldn't be verified and destroy them. And it actually had a really terrible, but I find it fascinating bug where if your network kicked up at all, it would not be able to verify. It would treat that as a false and destroy
Oh
things.
no.
So yeah,
Oh my
so
God.
um,
Wow.
So these things are definitely worth, I think, thinking through up front.
Yeah.
Yes, I should say so.
I tweet a lot in the main news about other virtual worlds. I'm more or less given up on a lot of them, with Sensorium or all these things coming along. Some say, oh, we use crypto or we use blockchain or stuff, but all they're doing is promoting differences rather than any kind of consistency between them. And sort of that's why I'm so keen, as you guys are, on like the open standards thing. How did both of you, in whatever order you take it, get involved in the Open Metaverse Interop, as the official name of OMI is?
Are you asking my involvement or how to get involved?
No, I'm just asking you how you got involved. I mean, but for
Oh,
those who don't know, it's a sort of I don't know what they call it's a collective of people who want to see open source and interoperability, basically. And
yeah. I mean, it really came down for me, timing. I was kind of, laying low after High Fidelity switched gears, and I was kind of just keeping my ears to the ground, and it all started from a tweet actually from Jesse, Mr. Metaverse, who kind
yeah,
of rallied a little bit of interest, and then everyone started gravitating to the AngelXR Discord, and it became clear that there was enough, activatable energy amongst us that we should do something. And so different people had ideas, and eventually the OMI name emerged, and it's kind of taken off from there.
yeah. Well,
Yeah,
I
and
think that
in a similar way, I'm always looking for people interested in sharing, looking at common standards, and there was a group that was promoting the idea of common standards and interoperability in particular between platforms. So that's what attracted me. I saw Tim was already over there, and I was working with him on the VR mod interest with Firestorm. So I went across and looked at what they were doing.
Well, I've learned a lot from this conversation. Thank you guys for telling us so much about it. It's great to get some of the background there and understand our heritage, as well as to understand where things are going. It's been fascinating.
Yeah, good signs of
yeah,
hope
well,
too.
well,
Yeah.
I've got both of you in the same place too. I just asked you about OMI. Um, the other place we all are, including those now, is using FairShare. What are your thoughts on that? How are you sort of thinking that? I don't touch Thirza because she's new, but I mean, I know
Using is a bit of an
we
overstatement.
haven't started using yet, but on the main server,
Exploring.
yeah,
Exploring. It's like a lot of these things. Yeah, I came across it because of Philip Rosedale's blog post about this. So I
ah,
just thought this
okay,
looks interesting. Philip Rosedale's always worth listening to.
uh,
He's got great ideas, interesting ideas about um,
UBI,
universal incomes, the
yeah,
basic incomes, yeah, which I think have a lot. There's a lot of merit in ideas like that. So I'm
yeah.
exploring, finding out what they could do.
Tim,
I not entirely sure why, but I have a hesitation, and I think it might just be with the someone a friend invited me to the Discord, and I was like, well, what is it? And they're like, they tried to explain the whole onboarding process where it's like a popularity contest. You have to get like
yeah,
voted in and stuff, and it sounded a little too high of an initial buy-in for me right now. So, but I am very excited about it. And someone in OMI actually suggested that they have a marketplace, and they're going to do a trial to put some like basically some IT assistance for OMI as a request for proposal in the FairShare marketplace to be paid with FairShare
yeah,
currency, and that sounded really exciting.
yeah. I think that was not Avatar Joy, uh, uh,
Evo?
the, maybe Evo, but no, it's another woman who tech. I keep thinking tech soup, but it's
Soup. Joyce.
no. There's
No?
another woman there. Joyce knows her very well, but yeah. Anyway, it matters little, but yeah. I mean, it'd be nice to see Omi. It was nice. I asked at the beginning whether I asked Eva if Omi would fit with it, and she didn't think the two projects were relevant, but they do seem to have merged a bit now. But
Well,
yeah,
perhaps we can have you guys come back in a few months' time when this project has kind of
I
moved
think
ahead and hear what you think about it. Would that be possible?
I think we'll have to.
It's one of the many things that are worth exploring.
Excellent.
With all these
I
things,
agree.
you dip in for a while and you see how it goes. I
Sure.
like to actively participate where it looks good, looks interesting, but you never know what comes of these things.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
it's all very open at the moment too. It's sort of finding its way, as it were. Right. Okay. Well, I think we better move on to our roundup bit with Safari and stuff like that. It's amazing how time flies here. I'm sitting here at the desktop trying to manage it.
Fascinating.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, before we just do, hopefully you can just hang on for 15 minutes or so. You're often on Safari, both of you anyway, aren't you? Or certainly you, Tim. While we go through that, is there anything else offhand you just wanted to get in, either of you, that I didn't manage to cover somehow? I know what it's like.
No, but I think I just say thanks for inviting us along just to have a chat about what's
Yeah.
going on in the viewer world.
Sure. There's a good pairing too between the two of you. There's no collide on so many points too. Okay, well, let's move to just got to do a bit of organizing off thing. I'm going loading on the center screen right now. Just quick. We got Thursday's blogs here. You'll find the reports on Safari at hgsafari.blogspot.com. So that's hgsafari. And let's have a look at Thursday's pictures at least of. Hang on, that's not the right one, is it? There we are. From last week. So Thirza, if you're watching, you can tell us what's going on in these pictures. This is
Yeah, I'm watching. I'm watching.
our musician friend again, isn't it?
Yes, Oldby, big time Oldby, Cutie Lala artist. There she is in the picture. And we decided, since this week was Cornflakes Week, we decided to go back and see her again. It was the second of two stops to have a party. The point of Cornflakes Week, as we talked last week, is to have a festival that is purely centered in opensim. It's not connected with any real world festival or religious celebration or national celebration. So it's not like Thanksgiving or Christmas or Easter. It's separate from all that. The idea is that it's kind of just for this civilization, if you like. And so Cutie was very kind. We'd already been to see her a few weeks previously. She's come up with this instrument that uses I think it's MIDI files.
Yeah.
So she plays music using sounds that you hear in world. So extraordinary. I don't know what Tim thought of it, if he experienced it, if he enjoyed that, and James, what you
I love
guys
it.
thought of it.
Yeah.
It's very unusual, isn't it? And of course with the cats. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, I love to see machines like this anywhere, but in virtual worlds, the sky's the limit. It's great to see new inventions like this.
Isn't it? It's because it's so fun, and the imagination just runs wild, and got all these instruments. Anyway, she's got a bunch of new things I'm not allowed to tell you about, but coming up. She's a big scripter, of course, so we have more adventures, and people can go independently to see her creations over there on Blue Peter's grid. Wingstropia is the proper name for it. Anyway, so this was the second hour of our 2-hour safari. And these are the pictures of it.
The other thing that's really crucial here, which we haven't mentioned, but if you hadn't been there, is that the sound is relative to your position as well. So as you walk, or indeed camera in to, say, the cat's on the left or the cat's on the right or the big instruments behind, the sound changes too. So you're not just immersed in what she's playing, but the whole mix, if you like, is controlled by how you move your camera. So it's almost jazzy. It's never the same twice, because
That's true.
yeah. Let's move to
And the kind of downside of that is, in the case of this party, that you can go and see the sim at any time, but she's literally there playing live. So if you go there, you won't hear music. You can see the instrument, but it's an event it's an appointment
Performance,
event,
yeah.
exactly, rather than something you can do 24/7, which is of course a great part of opensim, that so many of the places we visit are available anytime. But this was not if you wanted the full experience.
This is, I'll turn it down a bit while we talk over it. This is actually a video she put up. She's put up 3 this week alone, but it gives you an
Yes.
idea. It gives you an idea how she's seeing it when she's conducting, so to speak. She's got the various, the meow synths and the harmonies, and she'll be clicking on things like this to load the individual MIDI files and mix them together. It all looks
But
very
I just really want to stress, though, talking to her sort of in the back end of our organization of these events. What you guys have been talking about, the tech side, is so important, but the human side of it is, to me, equally important, almost more important, because she's been inspired to do these things because we went to her sim. So the creation of these things depends upon there being a human audience to experience it and
Yeah.
give her feedback and appreciation and encouragement, all those things. And obviously, Qtiolala is a very famous name in OpenSim, and she was in Second Life before that. She's an old bee of Second Life too. So this is not somebody who's just coming along now and just trying out a few things. So a person of any amount of experience still needs that encouragement and to feel like they're doing something for an audience. So it makes a huge difference. I just feel that's very important.
I'd really second that too, actually, because I've been there 3 times. The first time was just had a look. She wasn't really doing anything, and even the layout was fairly simple. The second time was on our first visit, where the music she played was different, and it was, it was sort of felt a bit trial and error-y. But this week, it was so slick. You can see the changes she'd made over those just a matter of weeks. And as I say,
Exactly.
presumably because we saw she performed for us once, and I thought, well, go do it again. I'm going to do it 100 times better. So that
Exactly.
feedback loop is so much part of it, I would think.
And not her, the whole team, the all the people on the grid are so involved, and that seems to happen over and over again. You see the whole team comes together for the experience. And here we see Whirly Placebo, who sang for us.
Yeah, this is our first visit. There's no sound on this because I was filming in the background, but so we could talk over it. But just a couple of short clips. So that's Whirly, and he's standing on a stage. He took a bit of it was a bit difficult to find actually because the guy who was doing the visuals, I think, told him to go there. Then he couldn't hear anybody speaking in chat. But
I think it's quite hard to judge distances when you have such an enormous sim sometimes. So I don't think it was quite understood how far away he was from us, because it's such a big place. How big was it? It was like a 3x3 VAR or something. Anyway, it's huge.
they were all
4x4.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
you can see when I actually lose control of my camera and pan out too far. Normally I just use my mouse wheel. I use my mouse wheel to go back in, but in this case, look how far away I am from the audience. This is the musician, and the audience are way down there. And if you're in local chat or even on stream, local chat, it's not surprising you can be heard or talk. But but the other thing here, apart from Whirly, he plays a lot of different style things, but there's something about the tone of what he did on that gig that just matched the environment almost accidentally, I think.
He's just such a great musician. He really was perfect, I thought, for the place. And his style. Of course, he sang for us last year, and he sang for us many other years for the Cornflakes event. So he's just to me, the perfect artist, because he brings that kind of the whimsical, but also there's such truth in what he forms. So he kind of captures the whole 360 degrees of an event like this. It's silly, but at the same time, in the silliness, there's a kind of a truth about our silly lives, if you like. And of course, the big eye there that you see at the back, that's Nick Spreen, who is a photographer in real life and
Yeah.
an art curator. And of course, this sim is his. What he did was I don't think he really knew anything about cornflakes before I asked him to do the build. So he came over and he took a few props, and from them he took his inspiration, and this is the result, which is kind of what happened last year with Cherry Manga, as you may remember that she made a build that was inspired by the prims of cornflakes, which is really what you want to do. These things always have to be growing and changing. It would be sad, and the kind of guy Cornflakes Woodcock was, he would hate it if he thought everybody was just, stuck in the past. It's great when these events can expand and change and evolve, and the different artists can make something new out of the art. You studied with primary colors, so
Yeah,
you can go in any direction.
yeah, that fits with what Nick's has done too. I mean, it's so jam packed, those visuals and the expanse of it. But then again, he too is using a lot of primary colors. They don't stand out so much because there's so much of it. But it's
Yes, he's a great builder, fantastic, and very quick too. So it was
yeah.
great. It was a
You
great
said,
event.
you said at the time, you were amazed how quickly he put this whole thing together. I mean, the surrounds are obviously part of a build he's got there already. Just
Yeah, I think there's like 4 or 5 parts to the, just on the one sim he is, it's very sort of Second Life in its style. So he has this huge amount of land, but he sort of partitioned it into different installations.
yeah.
So there's the Day of the Dead build, which, no, Dreams of the Dead it's called. And then there's another one that's Bubble Land. And then there's this one. So he makes good use of the space, but it's a lot of space.
It is. And the first time I went over to film, I asked him to go away so that I could focus on doing camera work and, doing it silently. Of course, the moment he went away, I was completely lost. I had to write him. Can you get me out of here to that last bit? It was.
It's true.
Oh, it was too fast and Celtic because you're dealing with you're not dealing with just an expanse of land, but you're dealing with the same expanse vertically.
Exactly. Yeah.
So you don't know whether you're high or low or near one corner or another corner because each corner joins another sim which has got great similarities. And yeah, very strange indeed. But yeah, you had a picture of me and what's her name? Okay, let's finish this up by just popping back to your blog again. That was Key of C, right? Crescent Roll. This is the one I want. Here we are. So this is. Oh, hang on, it's not, is it? Crescent Roll. Key of C.
I think we've seen them both,
Yeah, I think we've
because
seen
we
them
saw
both,
we saw the second one first and the first one second.
Thirza,
Oh,
did some of the Safari participants come here to the studio?
I just popped a few NPCs out there.
I'm seeing some
I
corny people out there.
a few corny folk in the audience
Yeah,
here.
yeah.
I think we
Yeah, with the other
I think we
intellectuals.
need. I think we need to turn the camera on the audience and wait for that applause that comes now and again. Well, where's the camera? Yeah. So, corny people, we love you. Bring on the corny folk. Very good. As I said on the day, I was searching for the Rice Krispies, and somebody
Versus the cornflakes. Yep.
yeah, the snap crackle pop. I was trying to make a joke out of it, but no, of course it's totally different. Right. Well, I think we're done. I think we're done.
Wow.
Yeah, and James doesn't have to let off the noise.
I don't have to let off the sound.
Well, he could let it off anyway.
He probably go out. We'll go out with James' noise, shall we? Yeah.
There it is.
That'll get your attention. All right.
Yeah, kind of does.
Yep.
Okay, folks. Well, time for us to go. I hope you've enjoyed the show. It's actually been a great chat this week. I mean, because we said viewer, but the whole concept of viewer, client, and server, and everything
Virtual
else
world.
is quite
Yeah. Yep.
wide ranging. So I'd like to thank our special guest, AI Austin, who I've been calling I. Thank you. Thank
Wait,
you, I.
I think that's backwards. It's I, Austin, who you've been calling AI.
Thanks for inviting us along. Thank you.
And
Nice to have you with us, eh?
Yeah.
and thank you to Humble Tim as well. Humble Tim Metaverse. Well, thanks, Tim. Yes. Yeah.
Thanks. My news cancellation tried to cancel me early. No, but thanks,
Wow.
Mel, and all.
Lovely. Thank you. And I think I'd better say thank you to the Giggle Master here.
Yep.
Thank you so much, Mel and James, and our lovely guests.
Co-host, yeah, we get into these giggle moves now and again. It's infectious because
Sorry.
when you do, I do, and everybody does. Right, and yeah, thanks also to the knob fiddler James for the vision, sound, and everything else. So thank you, James.
I'm glad to be here. And thank you, Mal.
Oh,
Yes.
that's unusual. Somebody thanking me.
Yeah.
Gosh, I didn't know I was here. Never mind. Okay, wonderful. And yeah, great show, everybody. Everybody here and everybody, whatever. If you're watching out there, do let us know what you thought. You can watch it at any time on my own YouTube channel, and it's occasionally embedded in other places too. We'll be back same time, same place next week with something or other. We keep it under wraps sometimes, so you never know what's coming up next. You might find out midweek if you look around, but we'll see. So, yeah, as usual, I wish you all a very good morning, a very good afternoon, a very good evening, and indeed a good tomorrow, depending on wherever and whenever you are. And that's all of it, really. We're out of here. Bye for now.